appointed hour. Everybody ready?
Ready.
All right, I'd like to call to order this public hearing for the Borough of Gettysburg Borough Council, July 27th, 2026, 6:30 p.m. We need to start this evening with a roll call. We need everybody in the room to state their full name for the record, please. We'll start at this end with the mayor, work our way around this way through the public, and end over here with community media.
Hi, Allison Lintel.
Kimberly Mayers.
William H. Mooney III.
Alicia Sanders.
Matthew Moon.
Harry Eastman. Jeff Rio.
Sarah Stahl.
Charles Gable.
Deborah Linville.
And Chad Claybaugh.
Yep. All right. This is our second hearing on the this year's allocation of CDBG funds. We heard preliminary suggestions for proposed uses 1 month ago, and today we are here to have our second hearing. Mr. Gable, take it away.
Yeah, this is the second mandated meeting, public hearing for the use of community development block grant funding. As you know, Gettysburg Borough is a direct entitlement community, and there are two of those in Adams County. We are one, and Littlestown is the second. This round of funding for fiscal year 2026, the borough's allocation for direct entitlement use within the municipality is $127,226. That compares comparable to other rounds of funding. Again, this is a public hearing, so at this point we can turn it over to the public if they would like to speak on any projects that they feel would be worthy of using these funds for.
Ms. Little, did you wish to speak?
I did not. My organization was here last time, and I'm just here enjoying the company.
All right. So I see no public comment.
There is no public comment. So at this point, you can officially close the public comment, which the president just did. And then it's council's purview to either adjourn this meeting or, since we do have time, if there's some opportunity that you would like to discuss, staff does have a recommendation for council to consider if that's something you'd like to do now or want to do that in the work session or at another date.
Let's move ahead.
Okay. Part of the requirements of CDBG funding is that the municipality provide a 3-year plan. In your packet, Planning Director Whitmore did provide that 3-year plan. It talks about some of the historical use of CDBG funds, and typically, more often than not, in most years, the borough has been using those funds for ADA compliance to work with the federal ADA regulations. There are instances where the municipality has pivoted and used CDBG funds in other ways. So South Street project some years ago was an example of that, where the borough combined 2 years of CDBG funding along with other grants and other funding sources to essentially rebuild South Street, and part of that was ADA compliance and streetscape enhancements. A similar activity was done in the last year or two, last 2 years rather, on Washington Street. Multiple funding sources, some of which was CDBG funds, was used for streetscape and ADA compliance in that realm. Last year, if you recall, the council had a request and pivoted to allot its 2025 CDBG funds for the Child Advocacy Center, and recently that project was given a large, I think it was $1.2 million grant award. So that was a good use of those funds, and that will be progressing here in the next year or so. There were some other requests recently at the first public hearing. It's a little premature to pivot to those types of uses, and so it's staff recommendation that for this fiscal year to return to ADA compliance. And in front of you is what staff proposes to use the funds for. in this funding cycle. So we have College Avenue at Bickley Alley. We have North Washington Street at Bickley Alley, West Street at Zerfing Alley, West Water at Monument Alley, Carlisle Street at Stevens, and I believe those are all of them. Chad, did I miss any that you're aware of?
I think that's the generality, is it's at alleys.
Yeah.
Can we see the last slide?
That one?
Yeah.
These are the four intersections, yeah. Sure.
Okay.
I think there's a couple in reserve, and I believe that's what this last slide is, 9, 10, and 11. Where are these, Chad? Do you recall?
Yeah, those are, so we always have a few alternates so that.
Oh, that's the alley leaving Kenny's.
Correct. That was actually an alternate on a previous year that we did not do
Right.
2 years ago. So we would like to go back and pick that one up.
All right.
But we make sure that we have a couple of alternates so that we spend all of the money, not under the amount that we got. We had to spend it all in a little bit, because if we had to carry the money over to a future year, it gets complicated with the logistics of the accounting.
Yep. So for council's benefit, a little bit about CDBG funding, which is something we need to be aware of. This is a little bit more difficult than a typical grant funding stream for us, in that it's not like we apply for the grant, we get awarded the grant, they hand us a check, and we go on our merry way. CDBG is a bit more complicated. This is administered by these are federal funds administered through the state to the counties, and then the counties manage the oversight of the use of the funds locally. And then that is also staggered. So we won't actually see these funds for 2 to 3 years. Once we have committed to a use for CDBG money, that use has to be seen through. All of the compliance reporting has to be done on it throughout the time it takes to complete it. We must spend every penny accounted, and everything has to be handled and accounted correctly, or we can lose this funding stream forever. Last year's award of CDBG to an outside entity, I would opine should be seen as the exception to the rule, not a new practice for us. One of the reasons staff was rightly very nervous about having an outside entity oversee this grant allocation for us because of the compliance issues involved. But Children's Advocacy Center had employed the services of a person who used to work in the county planning office. So the theory is that this capable and experienced planner who's intimately aware of how this grant funding works would be able to finish all compliance reporting on time and correctly, and not accidentally get the borough kicked out of this funding stream forever. So here's a hypothetical scenario. A year from now, a year before Children's Advocacy Center gets to spend that money, let's say that person takes a different job and they're just gone. So now we are trusting Children's Advocacy Center to find a different way to administer this grant funding and reporting correctly, and that puts the borough in a pretty precarious position. The other thing I would urge you to think about here as we discuss possible uses for the money is that we're going to continue talking about sidewalks probably from here until the day we all die, but we're talking about it tonight. And as Chad will attest, if we had $25 to $100 million, we might make a dent on our sidewalk problems. The work we are doing for ADA compliance using this grant funding is work we were compelled to do in 1992 and haven't, and most municipalities have not. I would argue that this ADA work is critically crucial to the borough's future. Does anybody else have any thoughts or positions they'd like to state here?
If the decision was already made, it should have been, in my opinion, made public so that good people like them didn't waste their time coming here asking for money that they're not going to get.
We have not voted yet. The decision has not been made. I mean, I'll tell you, last year, going into the vote, I was pretty sure we were going to be doing curb cuts. That vote was a surprise to me, so.
Does all of the money have to be spent on just one project, or can it be divided up?
I'll let Chad and Charles answer that one.
It-
You want me to take it?
I'm pretty sure the answer is it can be. I'm not sure if that's going to be the recommendation from staff.
Okay.
CDBG has a lot of hoops and hurdles to cross. So the more complicated you make it, it gets exponentially more complicated to see through.
Yeah, once you decide on a project, if you want to pivot midstream on that, it's not impossible, but there's a lot of extra scrutiny that goes with it. This is an incredibly difficult grant to administer, so difficult that the county employs a full-time person just on ADA compliance.
Okay. So even in the beginning of the process, if, there were two projects that, seem like they would be a good use of the money, would it be possible to split the funding rather than getting into the project and then pivoting to another?
The challenge we're having with recommending that right now is there's no other project advanced to the point of implementation. So if you allocate money for that, we're not completely sure that it's going to be able to be used for that project because an administrative plan for those funds on whatever project that might be has yet to evolve.
Okay.
And that actually spurs another thought. And so at this hearing or at this meeting, we're talking about only the FY 2026 funds. And as President Moon mentioned, we don't get the funds for another 2 years. So we'll actually be doing this project in 3 years from now. Mm-hmm. One of the things that staff has kicked around is putting 2 years of funds together and doing one bigger project. So we would do instead of doing a curb ramp project, let's just say, or a sidewalk project every year, we would do it every other year and put 2 years together into one fund. The reason why we are considering that is because $126,000 might seem like a lot of money, but in the world of constructing sidewalks, it doesn't go very far. And to administer the contract for this costs somewhere in the $35,000 to $40,000 range.
Okay.
So you're spending a significant amount of money to administer one contract. If you can put two of them together and spend the same $40,000 to administer that contract, you're getting twice as much work done for the same amount of engineering time. So the cost of the construction is another reason why, and it's a great question. I think you could do two separate projects, but if you did two $80,000 curb and sidewalk projects, you're not getting very much done that year. And especially if you're going to spend $30,000 or $40,000, you're going to spend 50% of the cost of the project just to administer the project. And then it kind of is, you got to start questioning, is it worth it? You're spending good money for bad at that point. So we would say go the other way. Mm-hmm. Instead of splitting it in half, put 2 years together, and let's try to get a $250,000 project done. And that's something we still have to work out with the county. Of course, we're going to have the same hearing next year. So we can't, I'm jumping the gun a little bit with this discussion. We're going to have the same thing. For now, we're going to be, if you decided to go with curb ramps for this year, we'll be looking at the same thing for next year. We'll add a couple more to it, and we'll decide if we want to put the two together or try to keep them apart. Of course, the county's going to have a say in that, so we have to keep them involved. They're a partner in this discussions.
In order to get matching funds from the state discretionary fund, do you have to be awarded local funds from your jurisdiction for CDBG?
Yes. So
Okay.
the award for the Child Advocacy Center, for example, was contingent upon the municipality offering all of its funding to that program.
Okay. And are they is the state discretionary funds in the same timeline, or would they be prior
I don't know the absolute answer on that. I mean, that award was, council authorized use of last year's funds many months before that grant was awarded. And so that was part of the nervousness the staff had, was the council authorized the use of our CDGB funds for that project, but then what would happen if that Child Advocacy Center project was not awarded the discretionary funds? Fortunately, it worked out, but we would be having a different conversation if it didn't, because then we'd have to go back and figure out what we're going to use our CDBG funds for that currently is not in the work plan at the county level.
Do you have any, has there been in recent times or in the past, any combination of county and borough funds, or are they always separately allocated, sort of to Kim's question? Can you,
Child advocacy is the first I know of where there was a combined effort. Chad, I don't know. Harry, I don't know.
It's the first that I know of that Gettysburg's done, at least in the last 15 or 20 years.
In terms of the state, but are you also saying they also got county CDBG funds? That was my question, because the county has a separate allotment than the borough, is that correct, for CDBG?
They do, but I'm not sure exactly what they're using those for. I'd have to check with Deanna.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you could apply for both pots of money, or if you had to choose one based on the location of your project, was my question.
It's a great question.
I'm not sure
I can
the
give
answer.
you I anticipate the answer is because you're an entitlement, you're not likely to also get other funds.
Yeah.
But I'm just guessing at that answer.
Yeah.
It's certainly something that we could run over to Deanna, see if she can give us a better answer and get back to you on that. It's a good question.
Okay.
Any other thoughts?
Are we just talking? We're not.
Yes.
We're not doing anything.
No, there's no votes lined up
Nope,
tonight.
no.
Yep. But your discussion will direct us on, how we should formulate a motion for the next business meeting.
I guess I'm curious about intersections 3 and 4 there, because it seems like the college just redid those sidewalks and would they have not cooperated with us on ADA stuff?
Do you know that?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a map that John put together.
What is the intersection we're looking at?
It's in front of the Cub where they had to redo the access road that came in.
Oh, that's College Avenue in Lincoln?
Yeah.
It's Lincoln. No, yeah, Lincoln.
Yeah, it looks
College
like
is it College at Bickley?
the map, it looks like it's College at Lincoln. Yeah, I think maybe the map was marked wrong.
Oh, maybe, okay. Now,
Could be
if
just-
that's the
Yeah,
intersection,
Bickle
that's
Alley
different.
is actually on the other side
Okay,
of the
yep.
dining hall.
Yeah, I have a feeling he just marked the wrong intersection on the
Okay.
map.
And then.
These are the street views on the screen now. So here you have College at Bickle.
Okay, so it's Bickle, it's not Lincoln.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and there are pretty strict requirements. It's a good observation there because there are very strict requirements that if a ramp has just been replaced within the last 10 years, you can't use money to do it again. So that would be probably the case there at the one you're thinking of there at the Cub building.
Here's the one outside of Kenny's.
Yep.
Water and Monument. And Carlisle and Stevens.
Yeah.
I just have a general question, Charles, or for Chad. When staff is deliberating about which projects take, not necessarily priority, or which projects would be a good fit for CBDG, are there other things outside of curb ramps that were on the table for, as options for what to use the funds for? I'm just curious.
Like other borough priorities?
Want to start, Charles, or do you want to go?
Go ahead if you have.
So the only other thing that I can think of it, so we mentioned a couple of times in this discussion how there's a lot of red tape, and when we had the projects where Charles mentioned where we went, and it was a bigger project, $1 million project, and this was a little one component of it, and we matched it with C2P2 funds and it got super complicated. It was very difficult. It would not be advised to try to get into that kind of complicated thing. So we got to try to keep it simple. The curb ramps things are very straightforward, simple. So the only other thing that we really talked about is just sidewalk replacements in general. The good news here is that we are doing pretty good with our curb ramps, better than most communities. We did have some litigation before COVID. We got those taken care of. There's 25 ramps, and we've continued to do most of the curb ramps in the borough. We're down just pretty much alleys at this point that need to be replaced. But at some point, I would say the next lowest hanging fruit, and the thing that we really need to get ahead of or start getting caught up with, I guess, is just sidewalk replacements in general. It's really difficult to replace just one property owner's sidewalk. It's way easier, way better to do an entire block at a time. So if you could start thinking about putting 2 years together and you have $250,000, you could potentially do a whole block of sidewalks. That would be a pretty straightforward project where you could apply this to. So that was the only other thing that I could think of, from the staff level that we were talking about, is once we get these curb ramps we're kind of under the gun because there's liability, litigation, there's those kind of things that we have to take care of. But then replacing all of the sidewalks within a block would be the next reasonable line item, I would say.
Could I follow up on that? Do you know of other public infrastructure funding that would fund sidewalk replacement and ADA ramps?
Yeah, there's I'm going to say a handful of them. There's TASA money. There's GTRP money. There is Safe Streets for All. We're going to be working on that planning. There's multimodal funds. Yeah, there are other state and federal grant sources that we have and continue to apply for different projects, for different sidewalk projects.
But those are competitive as versus the entitlement?
Very.
Very competitive. Okay. Yeah, we routinely apply for those pretty much every year for something, and we get awarded pretty much on a cycle. Most recently, we got the multimodal grant for the bike loop on Racehorse.
Okay. To speak to Bill's question earlier too, at the time we will vote on what to do with these funds too. The thing we have to allocate it to, and please both of you jump in and correct me if I'm misstating this. Essentially, the plan for what's going to be done with the money has to be ready to go. Shovel ready. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yep.
Planned, yes.
At the moment we commit the monies, we are committing to a plan that will be exactly executed. So I think the requests that were made of us for other uses were like, we're going to need some money, so you should give it to us. But they weren't necessarily shovel-ready projects that have a completed master plan of this is how the money is going to be spent. And there's also, I think, a pretty narrow definition of uses that the money can be applied to. And I can see how the other uses that were suggested could be sort of massaged to fit into one of those buckets, but not really. The black letter language of this grant funding is pretty explicit that it has to do with remediation of blight, investment in underdeveloped communities, and ADA remediation. So I think we're having a really good conversation here about that, though. So please, if you have more thoughts or questions, let's get them out there.
Do your groups have a shovel-ready project?
We do not at this moment, so we knew we would be looking at 2,000 next year, and that's why I'm gathering all this information.
Thank
We
you.
do not have something into Deanna by the 31st of July, and that was the
That's staff's calculation right there. If other people that want to use this money in a different way in the 2027 funding round, come to us, early spring next year with a plan, and then that allows us to queue it up for the public hearings in July of next year.
Okay, so does anybody at this point have strong feelings as to what we would instruct the staff to move forward with in building their agenda for our next meeting?
I think the staff has made a good recommendation, and I think it aligns with the overall plan for the improvement of the borough.
Yeah, I would agree.
Agree. Bill?
Based on what I've heard tonight, I would agree with that, and I would definitely recommend come back with a shovel-ready plan, and anything I can do to help with that, certainly would do that.
Jeff?
I agree with that. Thank you.
Chris, I know you came in late, but do you have a strong opinion either way? Okay. So I think we'll move ahead with the ADA funding.
Okay, we'll get a motion on your business meeting to that effect.
All right. With that, we will adjourn. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order this work session for the Borough Council for the Borough of Gettysburg for Monday, July 27th, 2026, 7 p.m. Announcements. An executive session of the Borough Council, the Borough of Gettysburg, was conducted immediately following the adjournment of the July 13th, 2026 monthly general business meeting of the Council, consistent with Section 708A1, Section 708A2, Section 708A4, and Section 708A5 of the Sunshine Act. An executive session of the Borough Council will be conducted immediately following the adjournment of this evening's monthly work session meeting, consistent with Section 708A1, Section 708A2, Section 708A4, and Section 708A5 of the Sunshine Act for the following purposes. 1, to provide updated information and to discuss matters involving the employment or appointment of current or prospective borough employees. 2, to provide updated information and to discuss strategy in connection with the negotiation of new collective bargaining agreements with the Teamsters Union Local 776 for both the borough's uniform police officer employees and the borough's non-uniform, non-professional employees. 3, to consult with its professional advisors in order to provide updated information and to discuss strategy in connection with potential claims related to the construction and completion of the Gettysburg Welcome Center project. And 4, to review and discuss matters of borough business which, if conducted in public, could lead to the disclosure of information or matters of confidentiality protected by law. Mr. Gable has an announcement this evening.
Yes, it's fairly lengthy, so please bear with me. This is community information regarding the upcoming Lincoln at Gettysburg Shall Not Perish and the Concert for America. The borough has received a number of questions regarding the upcoming Lincoln at Gettysburg Shall Not Perish commemoration and the Concert for America featuring Uncle Cracker. Because several organizations are working together to present these events, we would like to clarify each organization's role, how the events are funded, and how this collaborative effort benefits the entire community. First, with regard to Lincoln at Gettysburg Shall Not Perish. In honor of America's 250th anniversary, Gettysburg Borough is the host municipality of an immersive recreation of President Abraham Lincoln's historic visit and the delivery of the Gettysburg Address. Co-produced by the Lincoln Fellowship of Pennsylvania and Gettysburg National Military Park, Lincoln at Gettysburg Shall Not Perish invites visitors to step back to November 1863 and experience one of the defining moments in American history. Prelude programs on November 16th and 17th will feature a community square dance, educational presentations, living history programs, music, demonstrations, and interactive activities throughout historic Lincoln Square. On Wednesday, November 18th, President Lincoln arrives by steam locomotive, followed by a public welcoming ceremony, an evening program exploring the enduring significance of the Gettysburg Address with nationally recognized guests and dignitaries, and opportunities to visit the historic David Wills House. On Thursday, November 19th, a presidential procession will escort President Lincoln from Lincoln Square to Soldiers National Cemetery for a dramatic recreation of the dedication ceremony, culminating in the delivery of the Gettysburg Address. The event is being funded through grants, corporate sponsorships, and private contributions secured by the Lincoln Fellowship of Pennsylvania. Current sponsors include the Borough of Gettysburg, Patriot Rail, Open Minds, Gettysburg College, the Adams County Community Foundation, AAA Central Penn, Benchmark Event Services, High Peak Tent Rentals, Historic Gettysburg Adams County, Gettysburg Battlefield Bus Tours, and Ross Heller. Essential community partners include Gettysburg Borough, Main Street Gettysburg, Adams County, Destination Gettysburg, Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center, Gettysburg History, along with hundreds of volunteers, reenactors, and community members. Because of this extraordinary generosity, Lincoln at Gettysburg Shall Not Perish is free and open to the public. With regard to Live on Lincoln Square Concert for America, the Concert for America, held on Friday evening, November 20th, is a separate event produced exclusively by Main Street Gettysburg. The artist fees for Uncle Cracker, Nick Mitch, and Six Whiskey Revival are being paid entirely through Main Street Gettysburg's funding sources and private support. Gettysburg Borough is not paying the artist fees. But what is the borough's role? Gettysburg Borough's role is different. As the host municipality, the borough is investing in the shared infrastructure necessary to support the entire week of programming. This infrastructure includes a production stage, professional sound and lighting systems, heated event tents, public safety and security, accessibility accommodations, traffic management, emergency services coordination, and other logistical support that benefits attendees, participants, residents, and local businesses. By utilizing the same infrastructure across multiple events, efficiency is maximized while overall costs are minimized. How is all this being funded? An important point of clarification is how the borough's investment is financed. The borough's contribution is not funded through property tax increases or any new taxes. Instead, these funds come from investment interest earned over the past 5 years on borough reserve accounts, not operating funds. Using investment earnings for strategic community initiatives allows Gettysburg Borough to support economic development while avoiding additional tax burdens on residents. Why does this investment by the borough matter? Economic development is one of the core responsibilities of local government. In addition to providing essential public services, municipalities are expected to foster conditions that strengthen local businesses, encourage investment, create jobs, and support long-term community prosperity. Strategic investments in tourism and community events are recognized economic development tools used by municipalities throughout Pennsylvania and across the country. The economic impact of a week-long event of this magnitude extends well beyond the event venues. Visitors stay in hotels, bed and breakfasts, campgrounds, and short-term rentals. They dine in local restaurants, shop in retail stores, visit museums and attractions, purchase. Tourism professionals often refer to this as achieving critical mass, bringing together enough high-quality programming that the collective impact is substantially greater than any individual event could achieve on its own. Rather than traveling to Gettysburg for a single attraction, Visitors are encouraged to spend several days exploring everything our community has to offer. And this is a great example of collaborative effort. The collaborative model allows organizations to leverage shared infrastructure, coordinate marketing efforts, attract sponsors, and reduce duplication of costs. Whether someone attends the educational programming, the commemorative ceremonies, the Friday evening concert, or simply enjoys the atmosphere throughout town, the overarching objective remains the same: to honor Gettysburg's unique place in our nation's history while creating meaningful economic opportunities for the residents, businesses, and organizations that make our community thrive. As America concludes its 250th anniversary commemoration, the borough and many community partners are bringing the nation back to Gettysburg, the place where Abraham Lincoln reminded us what America is meant to be. And because of Lincoln's visit and his profound words delivered here, Gettysburg became more than a historic destination. It is a living, thriving, and vibrant community. The November events demonstrate what can be accomplished when public agencies, nonprofit organizations, educational institutions, private businesses, sponsors, and volunteers work together toward a common purpose. Together, we are preserving history, celebrating our nation, supporting local businesses, and ensuring that Gettysburg remains one of America's premier heritage tourism destinations for generations to come. We invite the nation to join us for this truly unique, immersive America 250 PA Adams County experience and celebration as we honor the past and inspire the future.
All right, thank you for that. We're going to take our first public comment section of the evening. This section is restricted to items appearing on tonight's agenda. If you'd like to make comment, we ask that you use the podium, speak directly into the microphone, please state your name and address of residence, and please limit yourself to 5 minutes. Is there any public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Our first item of business this evening, the mayor has prepared a proposal and PBS for us on the concept of a vacant property registry. I'll hand this over to the mayor.
Great, thank you. So I am grateful to have had a Gettysburg College intern working with my office this summer on some local government policy issues, and a vacant property registry was one of them. So Kendall has created some research around this is a policy tool, and I was hoping to facilitate an early discussion tonight on whether this might be something that's useful to utilize in the borough. So in terms of the issue and why we were exploring this as a policy solution, we have some vacant properties, whether they're commercial, residential, or lots, that are being underutilized, while we have very limited space for potential residential and commercial development. In addition, those vacant properties that have been, I'm talking about properties not that are on the market or looking to be sold, but ones that have been vacant for maybe several years. And they create greater social and economic loss in the community. In addition, about a year ago, there was a housing forum with folks all from the county represented, and the vast majority of Adams County residents did support prioritizing the reuse or the greater utilization of vacant buildings or lots as housing. So with this limited developable space, the question really is, could a vacant commercial and/or residential spaces be revitalized and rehabilitated, and would the creation of a vacant property registration ordinance address this problem? So what is the purpose of a vacant property registry ordinance? They might be created for different reasons. So these are a few of the reasons why a municipality might consider creating one. They can address blight, safety hazards with buildings, absentee ownership, those who are holding property for speculative reasons. They might address underutilization of existing commercial or residential spaces, or perhaps, after the foreclosure crisis, we saw a lot of communities creating these, as well as after the pandemic, when there were a lot of empty, vacant commercial buildings that were repurposed and reutilized in downtown corridors. Additionally, it serves as a tool for improving communication between existing property owners, lending institutions, and municipal agencies, and it could reduce vacancies in the community. So the way that you would formulate and create one would depend on the purpose for which you're using it. And so these are a few questions that I think would be helpful for council to consider broadly as they're thinking through whether this might be something useful in Gettysburg Borough. We are seeing some spaces that are vacant, both residential and commercial. Why are those spaces vacant, right? And would the intent behind the ordinance be to include both commercial and residential properties, including some communities just include properties in foreclosure as well? How would vacancy be defined, right? That could be defined in a lot of different ways. So defining that definition, often it ranges. It could be, after 90 days. There could be a particular grace period of which it could be a year or more, and then they have to register the next year. There's lots of different parameters around that. What is the cost of the registration? That really varies. We've seen anywhere, and I'll talk about some case studies in other jurisdictions, but that tends to be between $50 to $300 on average, but it can go up after that per property. And commercial spaces are often sometimes charged the registry fee by square footage. There might be conditions in which you might want to exempt properties or seek exemption for particular reasons. Additionally, if there is a registry process, then it also would link in with building and code enforcement in terms of how that vacancy would be required to be maintained and who would be responsible for doing that. There is typically an escalating violation penalty structure for those buildings that fail to register. And then ultimately, the main question is this going to be a tool that's addressing the question of why this space has been vacant? Some of these spaces have been vacant, and could we reutilize them or better utilize them as a community, specifically as it relates to housing? So I'm going to put some questions sort of out there for you all to think about, and then I might go through a few more of these topics. But I would love to hear discussion surrounding whether you think commercial or residential vacancies are an issue, why or why not. Apologies for the typo there. The next is about whether you think the benefits of using this vacant property registry would address the underutilization of these particular spaces. Are there any limitations or concerns? Or alternatively, do you think other policy tools would better address the issue? So just a couple big picture things. There could be many reasons why spaces are vacant. Here is a few that could be the reason why we're seeing long-term, multi-year vacancies for underutilized spaces, right? And these are, I don't necessarily want to read them all, but you can kind of see a few here. In terms of defining vacancy, it could be related to time. It could be related to if there's no longer utility or water usage there, visual inspection or blight, failure to comply with code, major code issues, as well as tax delinquencies or foreclosure. And different types of properties could be covered, as well as different types of properties exempt. In terms of the administration and cost, I don't have a specific financial impact statement with specificity, but there is some questions around which department of the borough would run or enforce this type of program. Typically, it's done through an ordinance. I did put up some more novel models that I found on the slides. A lot of departments run it through their planning office or their code enforcement office. There is a program in Flint, Michigan, where they actually provide some grant funding through a community foundation to participating volunteer groups who help do the data collection, and they call it Your Neighborhood Inventory Program. It's a public portal that you can see the portfolio for the entire community. Easton, Pennsylvania has a particular review committee that reviews these types of properties, and then they also collaborate with their land bank and redevelopment authority. So questions surrounding capacity, identification, staff, and software are things to consider. In terms of what type of fees might be collected and how they might offset the administrative costs to run a program like this, I have some examples here. Wheeling, West Virginia, which after doing this for 3 years, they had 155 of their properties registered. They demolished 19, and they generated $15,800 in registration fees. You can compare that to some estimates for Youngstown, Ohio, which are much higher. Again, it depends on the community, and it depends on the fees that you're charging and the purpose. As an example, if we had 100 vacant units and each paid $200, that would be $20,000 that could go towards administration. In terms of compliance, then of course there are self-reporting mechanisms for this type of ordinance, and that would then need to be enforced. And that could be related to also penalties for noncompliance. They could be escalated or increasing each year as they are out of compliance or failure to pay. There would also be questions around whether then the borough would be obligated to maintain these delinquent properties and how they might do so, and if that's tied to the registration. Then a larger question would be whether the registry itself would be public. Okay, a few more things to consider, and then I wanted to turn it back over to the questions. Some legal and equitable considerations. Would this create a disproportionate hardship on specific owners? Particularly smaller owners versus larger corporate owners. It's an open question. Should there be exemptions or grace periods for particular types of properties or buildings? And how will the ordinance handle properties that are in a state or probate limbo and what that looks like, which takes a little bit more time, of course, for ownership and other things to clear. This is not new. The VPRO ordinances have been adopted by a few of our neighboring jurisdictions. I put a few up here: Hanover, York, Lancaster. I think Reading also recently was considering one if they don't have one in place. They have been fairly active in Virginia. Wheeling, West Virginia was a pilot project for the entire state, which then the state adopted multiple. Pottstown, Pennsylvania also has one. So these could certainly be looked at for further case studies on their approaches and also the effect that they've had. Okay, and then implementation, again, public versus private, how would that be maintained in terms of the list? Would that help? Would there be appeals processes or not, et cetera? So circling back, this is a policy tool to address a specific issue. It may not be the solution for the borough, but I think it's worth discussing what the benefits might be, whether a VPRO would address underutilization, whether a different tool might be, a policy tool might be helpful to allowing us to revitalize these existing vacant spaces and/or perhaps in connection with an adaptive reuse ordinance, create additional housing by being able to use vacant commercial spaces. So I will leave it at that.
Members, discussion, questions?
Seems,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
just seems that it might be an issue looking at the statistic in the PBS. It says per 2020 census data, approximately 354 of the borough's 2,801 housing units were vacant. So that seems pretty high. I mean, that's interesting. How did they get that statistic using census data?
Yeah, that I don't know, and I think there's an intersectional issue here. In terms of available rentals, we actually have a very low vacancy rate in the borough, lower than the state average. In terms of vacancies that are listed there, from the census data, those are presumably all units, and I'm not sure how the census was calculated that, but I can certainly look up more information for you on that.
Yeah, I would question that as well. I mean, we don't even really think the U.S. Census actually captured our population accurately, much less was it a review of domiciles. I'd be curious to see how they came up with that as well. Did you get a sense in your preliminary research how prevalent an issue this is in the borough currently?
Anecdotally, I think there are both commercial and residential spaces that are underutilized. I don't think we have a full inventory, to my knowledge, in terms of number of units, if that's your question.
Yeah, it can be hard for us to know. I mean, the proliferation of, the vacation short stays, your Airbnbs and your Verbos, they've really wreaked havoc on our inventory estimates. I can tell you, we found a property really close to my house within the last month that you look at the app, you wouldn't know it was multiple Airbnbs in one building. The only way we figured it out is by counting the driveway spaces, which were labeled. So, I mean, so we have a house with 2 full apartments in it and nobody living in it. Does that count as vacant, or is it not because it's, a vacation short stay? You know,
Well, I think that also brings up questions of compliance with our short-term rental ordinance
sure
as
does.
well. Yeah.
It sure does. Yeah, I mean, the point being, it's hard to ferret these things out sometimes, especially when we have a code enforcement department of one. I think there's also other weird lots that we would have to consider. Like, I can think of the one down by the sewage treatment plant. It's this massive undeveloped parcel, but not from lack of trying. The owner has tried to sell it multiple times, and developing it is difficult because of its relationship to the floodplain. And so, I mean, the owner has tried, but has not succeeded. So do we punish that person?
Usually, in a lot of the comparative ones I've looked at, if something's actively on the market, they're not charged the fee, or if they have some sort of plan for utilization or redevelopment, they're usually exempted.
Yeah, the other one I would think about, I know of at least two, one on South Washington and one on North Stratton, where the property owners actually own the adjacent lot, which constitutes a side yard for them, but it's actually a separate parcel. And the reason the parcels were acquired in tandem is that even though there used to be houses on these side yard parcels, under our current zoning, you couldn't possibly build a house there because it wouldn't pass the measurements for build to and dimensional standards. So now this person has these people would have a lot that is empty, underutilized, vacant, but they can't actually develop it without maybe demolishing their own home and building something that spans two. There are places where I think we would have to be really sensitive to circumstances that are out of the owner's control.
I was wondering in your research, Allison, or in your intern's research, whether they discovered the reason for Hanover's, what was the motivation for Hanover Borough implementing their vacancy ordinance?
Yeah, we'd have to look into that. My understanding actually was Hanover's was passed years ago, but only recently have they started enforcing it. And I don't know if theirs is more blight related. I would have to look into that, but I could look and see.
Our closest.
Yeah.
Out of the ones on the list, it seemed to be our closest neighbor.
This is the first I'm hearing, so I just jotted down some notes as you were talking. This would not be considered a tax, correct? This would be a fine under the
Correct.
code, because we
Correct.
can't levy taxes against specific individuals.
Correct,
It has
yeah.
to be.
That's my understanding. I would defer to the solicitor, but
Would be a registration fee, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Fee. Yeah, that's what I figured. Just some things to consider as far as owners go, if they're, doing renovation. I've seen renovation projects go well over a year. Or if they're unable to find suitable renters, you're looking to sell with no buyers, waiting on permits, that kind of stuff. So I think that would all need to be covered under the exemptions and stuff if it was something that we would be looking at, because you don't want investors to, be looking to come into Gettysburg and this be something that keeps them away. Like, oh no, I've got a 3-year renovation I'm looking at. I can just do that somewhere that doesn't have this.
yeah.
Register.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And to the contrary, I think there are investors looking to come in, and there are properties that have been sitting vacant for years and years that investors would be very interested in doing something with, or could be turned into something useful, having a useful life, economic and social in the community. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I would need to see a little bit more as far as these places that are like the Gettysburg, that, if there is some, information that their borough staff could provide us, this is how it's going, this was what works, this is what administratively is really tough, getting a hold of these owners or finding out who they are, keeping track of them year after year. Is it vacant now? Is it not vacant now? Because I feel like it's going to be, unless there's an incentive I don't know for the owners, they're probably not going to want to opt in voluntarily.
Unless there's significant escalating penalties for failure to register, and that's, I think, sometimes they're structured. But yeah, I think there's an enforcement question. I think generally, broadly speaking, it opens up the channels of communication between the municipality and the property owners, so that if there is a reason for the long delay, that there can maybe be some collaboration there in providing resources also, or recommending, yeah. So I wrote down information on effects of the existing ordinances in neighboring communities would be helpful in terms of how they have found their implementation and effectiveness to be.
I think that's all. I
And with the properties that are registered, would that be public? Would that be public knowledge, or?
That's a good question. Philadelphia does have a public registry, I think separated by commercial and residential. Hanover's, to our knowledge so far, is primarily just, looks like staff can view it. So I don't know how they choose to share it. There are some companies that have software registration systems.
If there's some documentation of the registered properties and so forth, that would be subject to right to know. That would be public information or subject to public disclosure.
If requested, yeah. I guess the question is, like, how easily is it something you want to put? I think Flint, Michigan's is like a map, and Philadelphia has an Excel spreadsheet or a map that pops up, but I don't know. Others might just only provide it upon request, yeah.
I'm just thinking
That
from
makes
like an
sense.
investment, like if somebody did want to invest in
Yeah.
a property, this could be a tool that they could use
To find.
to find property.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like my stormwater assessment is public record, but we're not printing it out and putting it in the lobby for everybody, but it's available upon request. For me, I guess the biggest question is one of enforceability. You know, we have a number of provisions in the ordinance that are just unenforceable. I'm not sure how we would collect this information if people didn't self-volunteer. And to Peter's point, self-volunteering means you're paying more money on top of your taxes. So I'm not sure how we compel people or incentivize people to self-disclose the vacancy, unless it's obvious, like it's a vacant lot with a poly tires on it. But if it's a building that they've left vacant for some reason that makes sense in their mind, but if they don't want to disclose that, I'm not sure how we get that information. And that's sort of where I was getting at with the Airbnb thing. Like, under the ordinance, they can only have one per parcel and only in certain zones, but people still buy houses to make them into Airbnbs. And it's on us to go ferret them out and find them. They don't have to self-volunteer. And we don't get, and this is a sucky part too, but we don't get itemized bills from the state as to what parcels pillow tax is being collected on, which would be really helpful.
Can I just mention something to your question about how would you know? Some of the other jurisdictions look at utility shutoff records, property tax delinquency, foreclosure status, mortgage foreclosure, nuisance abatement reports, and some even look if U.S. Postal Service hasn't been delivered there in 90 days.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
And it said on one of the slides that tips, so there would be probably some hotline people could call and say, like, spot a vacant place, call this number or whatever, something, some way.
Would you put in like a grace period for that? Let's say you do end up implementing this and you set up the self-registry program, and let's say someone somehow misses it, or they are not on that property, doesn't get it immediately. Would you implement some sort of grace period so they aren't immediately getting these extra fines if they don't know that they're supposed to?
Yeah, I think it would come down to implementation. There would probably be a gap between creation and implementation. And I think in some of the ones I've looked at, it was like a 1-year grace period. But I think it would, you would have to educate folks on the new process, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just everything in the way you've described it, and even the costs of administrating it, I don't ever see this as a revenue generator for us. But I think what it does do is push forward this sort of collective goal of maximizing the ability to house our population. I think frequently of the fact that in the comprehensive plan 10 years ago, Gettysburg Borough was specifically identified as a place ripe for the development of new housing, and in that 10 years, we have lost housing. So I think I understand as I'm understanding the push behind this, it is about creating opportunity for housing within the borough. And where there are vacant properties, getting those back into an inventory that can be usable by the population. That's how I'm understanding it.
There's also a public safety aspect to it. And I wanted to ask Chief Snyder, I was reading through the materials, and obviously firefighters, it's good information to know what buildings are vacant because there's a higher degree of danger going in. And of course, with unoccupied buildings, there can be all kinds of illegal activities and things. Have you had any experience in your municipalities that you've worked in with this type of thing?
They can become a nuisance, absolutely. Properties that aren't maintained, don't have regular people inside, vacant properties. They can be a problem for a whole host of things. People that don't belong there, fire hazards, it's a whole host of things. And I guess just from a neighborhood perspective as well, I don't know that any one of us sitting here would appreciate chronically vacant residents in their neighborhood. I don't think it's it's not good for the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to the point about availability of information, a lot of communities that do have these would provide the list to law enforcement and fire police so that they would have the list of those properties available.
That's smart.
I think a lot of the questions that we've been asking are good and important questions, but I want to affirm the goal, as Matt is, of what this could attain, what it could achieve. And I think a lot of the questions are just the way we define things in the ordinance. Like, we can work through those challenges, but I would be very excited about something like this that could lead to more housing, more development, and less vacant properties, for sure. Yeah.
How long do you estimate it would take to collect all the data of the vacant properties?
Good question. I mean, generally it's an annual registration, so each year you would have information, and certainly I would think you'd have to do follow-up, whether that's through a particular staff member, whether there's a community effort. But in terms of comprehensively, I don't know, but I think annually you would be updating the registry. Yeah. I mean, I think also to keep in mind, if the goal is more housing, it would also be what is the intersection between this and our zoning ordinance, and in terms of could we utilize commercial spaces, could those be converted into housing units, or would there be restrictions based on the zoning usages? So sometimes there's what's called an adaptive reuse framework also included to allow for commercial spaces to be repositioned as mixed types of properties.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a huge problem for us. I think almost every one of our zones allows for residential uses as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is a question for Harry, I guess. I remember seeing something years back again about like a vacant, like a store front thing that was kind of like this, or at least along the same vein. Is there any like legal issues as far as like property rights, like, hey, you can't tell me what to do with my property, that type of thing? Like, if I want to leave it vacant, I can. I'm not saying I'm for that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, I think under almost any sort of regulatory scheme and so forth, that's really kind of what you're doing in terms of how, like, property maintenance, how you maintain your property versus, you're always going to have that tension, if you will. Mm-hmm. And what you are dealing with is what council you determine to be in the public interest, that the public interest is something that warrants as a tie too that you are addressing by that regulation. And so forth. But yeah, no, that's a good point. You're always going to have that. Zoning, I mean, almost anything we do kind of has, on a local level, has that tension again between, I mean, what are private property rights and what is an overarching public purpose that allows you to, I'm not going to say interfere with those rights because it's not that, but allows you to regulate for the higher public good, if you will.
Did you run into any research on the vacant storefront? It wasn't a tax, but something like this in your research?
Well, there are other states who do it as a tax, but in Pennsylvania, my understanding is that's not feasible. So they've done it as a fee registry program in Pennsylvania, but there are states who have vacancy tax programs. You're shaking your, I would defer to Harry again, I should say.
Yeah, I was going to say, basically, I mean, we have the taxes that are provided for us under the Local Tax Enabling Act. That's not provided for. That could change legislatively. That could be a possibility, but that would have to come from the state in that regard. So, but you're correct. That's why the Pennsylvania ordinances are geared toward a registration fee penalty sort of in terms of revenue. So,
And just to reiterate, that it wouldn't be for revenue. It'd be more, anything that we would get would be for administrative costs.
Exactly.
So it's about the blight, the property values around it, public safety.
It might
all those
actually,
issues.
it might actually cost us money to do this.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
for the public, you know,
Right.
we
Yeah,
talk
the
about these
I mean, the
things.
registration fee legally has to be tied to, I mean, essentially, the cost to the borough of maintaining or administering to the program. Or, you know, if it isn't tied, then we're talking about a tax. Yeah, I mean, in essence, is what you're talking about.
Right, but this could very easily, like, we have a lot of properties that have been bought up by out-of-state venture capital companies, right? If we're in a position where we're sending them letters and then certified letters and then legal notices, and then we're getting lawyers involved, like, this could actually cost us a ton of money to enforce, depending on how resistant to compliance an owner were. But
I will say
even
some
still-
of,
I'm sorry, just one second.
Yep.
Even still, the goal here is to, maximize usage. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and I was just going to add on to your point about out-of-state owners. Some of the purpose of doing some of these also is to identify individual owners and track them down, is to make sure that there's open lines of communication. So some of these registries, depending on, I think we have other ways of doing this, at least for the rental unit ordinance, but is to require an ID of an individual owner that's tied to the property.
I get excited, again, I'm reiterating something I already said, when I hear about a potential solution to a challenge we face that might move us forward. And I think one of these slides indicated that this isn't the only thing that we could do. There are other solutions that we might want to entertain. And I remember getting equally excited when someone had my ear about a land value tax. So I'm curious if it would help us if we had sort of the benefits and challenges of a land value tax, which is a bigger change than this. This might be an easier thing to attain than a land value tax change, but to have them side by side, to have John's input on it, those things would help me.
Could you say a little bit more about what you mean by that? Is it based on the taxing value of the improvement, or the taxing value of? Go ahead, I'm going to have you explain it.
It's the taxed value of the land itself, and so it separates into two different taxes.
Okay.
One on the value of the land, which becomes the higher tax, and then it takes away the penalty of developing your property. So people who put a lot into their property and under our tax system see their taxes go up because I just improved it. That doesn't happen. The higher tax is on, this is a valuable piece of land, And so the person who is hurt by it is someone who has a valuable piece of land that they don't develop, that they don't improve, that they're not utilizing to make money off of, right?
Yeah, and I'll have to confirm, but I think, I'll have to circle back with the intern and do some research, but I think Harrisburg might have something.
That's right. That's what Harrisburg is credited from. When I was a college student in 1991, and I would walk around downtown, and I wouldn't see a soul in Harrisburg. There was no one in downtown at 9 o'clock at night. And that's not true anymore. And part of the credit is to the land value tax change.
But we would have to dig into whether something like that were allowed in a borough versus a city like Harrisburg. That's interesting, though, the idea of that a parcel that sits empty but has just been rezoned for 7-story development would have a higher potential value than that same parcel with a 2-family home put on it.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. I think we'd probably have to work with the county on that as they do all the assessing. That's interesting. Okay, so I didn't hear a ton of resistance to this concept. If anything, just questions about how it could be maybe right-sized for us. Does anybody have a strong opposition to pursuing more information on something like this? Okay.
I mean, I would, again, before I would vote, I would definitely need to see some more stuff. I'm not really leaning either way at this point, but I see value.
Okay. All right. So what I think I'm hearing is if you keep digging into this with the staff and coming up with workable suggestions, I think you would find that we would hear that.
Okay.
And see where it goes from there.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you put into that. Thank you for all the work you put into that. Appreciate it. Unless anybody has any final comments, we'll move on. All right. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Gable, let's talk about sidewalks.
We are trying to get sidewalks back to the top of the agenda because it's obviously a pressing need in the entire community. And since we do have some new folks on council, the president asked me to start this discussion with a Venn diagram to, and this is useful for the public, so I hope community media can take the feed to wherever it goes and signals across the interwebs. Sidewalk ordinance is exceptionally challenging because there are so many other ordinances that cross or intermix with it. So here's a Venn diagram, sidewalk ordinance being in the middle, but there's a lot of other ordinances that, or initiatives that intersect with the broader sidewalk ordinance. So we have not really developed a sidewalk repair program yet, but that is on our list of things to accomplish. We do have a stormwater management ordinance. We have essentially a sidewalk clutter ordinance with A-frame signs and outdoor furniture. We have a shade tree ordinance, outdoor dining. We have who manages Lincoln Square and policies that relates just the general circle of the square. All of those are tangential to sidewalks. They all touch sidewalks in various ways. Many, many moons ago, we created this little PBS that we titled 2016-12, which means this topic started in 2016. And 10 years later, we are still working on it. And I gave an A, B, C through G, and where we have anything crossed off, I had thought it was done. Well, it's not. So tonight, we would like to talk about sidewalk clutter, A-frames in broad terms, and essentially reopen those because I think there's some tweaking that we have to do there. And forgive me, but I want to make sure I got all the points So I just wrote a statement on this that kind of introduces the topic. Staff's identified recurring conflicts between the borough's outdoor dining regulations, this is Chapter 13, licenses, Part 11, outdoor dining areas, and the public right-of-way requirements contained in Chapter 21, streets and sidewalks. While the outdoor dining program has successfully activated public spaces and enhanced the downtown experience, the existing ordinance provides limited administrative flexibility to address routine operational and maintenance concerns. The most common issues involve unintentional encroachment by seated patrons into required pedestrian travel areas, the placement of furniture and other appurtenances beyond approved tables and chairs, and the obstruction of public infrastructure, including donated ceremonial brick pavers surrounding Lincoln Square. Current regulations provide only limited circumstances for permit revocation and do not adequately authorize borough staff to require temporary relocation of outdoor dining elements to facilitate sidewalk cleaning, infrastructure maintenance, utility work, or other routine public operations. Similar limitations exist with respect to the enforcement of A-frame sign permits. To better align Chapter 13 and 21, staff recommends amending the ordinance to establish additional administrative authority for the manager or their designee to temporarily suspend or modify outdoor dining operations as necessary to maintain public right-of-way and perform maintenance activities. Staff also recommends expanding the grounds for permit suspension, or revocation when repeated violations occur. Additionally, staff recommends requiring all approved outdoor dining areas to utilize borough-issued stanchions, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, or other standardized barrier systems to clearly define the licensed dining outdoor footprint. A uniform barrier system would provide a consistent aesthetic throughout the town, improve visibility of pedestrian travel lanes, reduce unintentional encroachments into the public right-of-way, and better protect public infrastructure such as the ceremonial brick pavers. Standard barriers would also provide patrons and restaurant operators with a clear visual boundary for permitted use while reinforcing that the surrounding sidewalk remains a public space. Staff's continued outreach to downtown businesses indicates that participation in the outdoor dining program is not constrained by permit costs. Rather, the primary limiting factors are the physical dimensions of available sidewalks and the need to preserve safe, ADA-accessible pedestrian circulation. These proposed amendments are intended to preserve the success of the outdoor dining program while providing clearer operational standards, improved aesthetics, and greater flexibility for borough staff to maintain the public infrastructure. So I hate to do this, but I think some visuals will speak to what we're doing here. This is specific to Lincoln Square. These are the apple trees outside Plowman's. You can see that in theory, they're movable, but one human cannot move them at a time. And so you can see they're sitting on top of brick pavers with names, and there is a registry of these bricks, and people who bought these bricks come to town to look at them, and they cannot because these are obstructed by some of our outdoor dining perimeters that local business entrepreneurs put out there. You can see aesthetically not well kept. The borough made a policy that the municipality is responsible for the maintenance of Lincoln Square, and our staff cannot gain access to take care of it properly. So the next, forgive me, is an AI-generated image, and it's for example purposes only. So our thought is to provide, as part of your outdoor dining permit, the borough would issue the permittee or the licensee a standard barrier that would, whatever design is come up with, but it would be uniform across everyone that has an outdoor dining permit. And then staff would have a physical barrier to delineate for not only for the business, but for a pedestrian access and ADA compliance. So with that introduction and the challenges that we are identifying, I would open it up for discussion and comments or questions.
I want to jump in here and take over for a second, especially for the benefit of our newer members. Put it back in your mind that Venn diagram, and then draw a big circle around all of it that encompasses all of it, and that's the ADA. We have some pretty significant challenges, not just because we have places where different ordinances overlap, and as well as state laws and federal laws, but one of the other big challenges for us here is the establishment of ownership on sidewalks as well. So Harry has done some work kind of establishing that, yes, we do in fact own the square, but then we start moving out from the square along Route 30, and the rights of way get a little hairier there, and who owns what becomes a little bit more difficult to determine. Whereas when we get into residential neighborhoods, it's much, much easier. You own that sidewalk in front of your house, and you are responsible for it financially under the ordinance forever. So if you have a damaged slab that is just falling apart, like I do in front of my house, that is my responsibility to repair under the ordinance. Last year, Council, we've spent probably 18 months digging into each of these little overlapping sections of the Venn diagram because it is tricky. One of the big sticky issues here has to do with specifically the Shade Tree Commission. The commission is empowered by council to create a planted, wooded urban environment. It's better for our health, it's better for the environment, it's better for the heating and cooling of homes because streets and sidewalks collect heat, which is then reflected back into homes. There's a lot of reasons we want to have a healthy Shade Tree Commission. But currently, the Shade Tree Commission sort of operates with the borough's auspices and the idea that our right-of-way through your property is ours to do with as we wish. So if we want to put a tree in front of your property, we're going to do it. That's not necessarily 100% the practice all the time, but sometimes it has been. We've had a couple property owners say, I didn't want a tree in front of my house. I didn't want a new hole cut in the sidewalk in front of my business. But the problem then is that some of these trees that are planted are not ideal for an 18-inch wide planting strip. And after 10, 20 years, the roots will heave the sidewalk. And sometimes it doesn't even take that. Sometimes it only takes 5 or 6 years. When Columbia Gas redid Seminary Avenue, they redid the sidewalk on the entire block. Everybody got to choose what species of tree they wanted in front of their house. And for a couple of years, it looked great. And only 5 years in, that sidewalk has significant 4-inch heaves in a couple places. So if the borough has compelled you to have a street tree, either against your will or not, and then it damages the sidewalk, under the ordinance, that's your problem, dog. Like, sorry, I'm sorry that happened to you. That's terrible. And last year, council decided that that's not really the way we want to be doing this, right? I don't see a world where we can move away from the current model where property owners are responsible for their sidewalks. I don't see how the borough could possibly ever take on the probable $150 million worth of infrastructure we have in sidewalks. This is a clear example of a place where we have to cost share. That said, there are rules on how sidewalks have to be created and poured. We've had very ambiguous rules in the past that say you have to use a borough-approved vendor, but then there is no list of borough-approved vendors. You have to use concrete that meets specific engineering standards, and only a certain kind of contractor is going to be able to do that for you. You can't go get a couple bags of Quickcrete and do this yourself. Right? So there are rules, but again, we're not super great at enforcement. And when people have skirted those rules and just gone out and got a couple bags of Quikrete, we go, well, all right, and we don't do anything. So we are probably going to, at the end of this, in a year or 2 years, whatever, whenever we finish hammering this all out, we're probably still going to be in a model where you are responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalk on your residential parcel. But last year, council did make the determination that if the damage was caused by a borough street tree, that really should be the borough's responsibility, especially if you didn't want that tree there. It gets a little trickier too, in that we have areas where there are street trees that have done massive damage to the sidewalk. I'm thinking about Hay Street. I'm thinking about West Lincoln, Baltimore Street. Those trees are so big and so mature, they predate the Shade Tree Commission. So did the borough plant them? Did the homeowner plant them? We'll never know. So at some point, the borough just has to take ownership of these trees and start dealing with and remediating the problems. That said, we do have still significant challenges on establishing ownership, particularly on Route 30 of sidewalks. I know Chris and I are avid walkers. I know Chief Snyder runs everywhere in this town every day. If you don't spend a lot of time walking around downtown, I really recommend you take a day and do this. Walk out and see Kim at the hardware store. That walk up York Street is informative. Both sides of the street will teach you things about the infrastructure that you just are not going to learn driving by. I really recommend all the members do this. We have significant challenges, and if you really want to get a sense of how challenging our sidewalks are, I would even go further and please do it in a wheelchair. Borrow one and just try to go a block from the square in any direction. You can't do it. Our sidewalks are impassable for people with disabilities, for people who use mobility devices, for people who use pushing strollers sometimes. There are choke points where pedestrian traffic just cannot flow. I liked the idea of the barriers. There are places it would work, and there are places it wouldn't work. We have one place comes to mind where the outdoor seating is just too precariously close to two borough-owned tree wells. And if somebody sticks their chair out, there's not 2 feet to pass, much less 5. All right, so there are places where we have to be a little bit more restrictive, or we have to come up with better solutions for our tree wells, whether that's metal grates, whatever it is. But this is a big, big, big topic. In order for us to start chipping away at this over the next few months, and folks, we're about to get into budgets. Like we're gonna be busy here this fall and winter. But in order for us to start chipping away at this, we're gonna have to look at each of these items ahead of time, and we're going to have to come in and really just start banging these things out. So tonight, we're going to talk about sidewalk clutter and A-frames. And this is a fun one because we've already talked about this 6 times.
Yes, we have.
I'll tell you the same thing I said 6.5 years ago. Let's just ban A-frame signs. They are always in the way. They're never not in the way. They're always an ADA impediment. That is an unpopular opinion. I am alone in the woods with that one. But here we are for the 6th time saying, how are we possibly going to get these businesses and their employees to go out every morning with a tape measure and make sure there's nothing within 5 feet of these signs? I don't have an answer for that. So, where do you want to direct this conversation, Charles?
Well, let's start with some positive news, and that is we do have an example of where a barrier works, and I will point to the pub. Now, we've had challenges with that in that there's that choke point right there where that one parking space is. As you get to the intersection at Carlisle Street from the square. But the property owner there, business owner there, has worked with staff, and their footprint, their square footage for their outdoor dining has not changed. But what has changed was the configuration. They have the same space, it's just configured differently, and so now that's no longer an issue. And part of the success of that is because they voluntarily put out a very nice, amenable physical barrier. We all know it. It's, the nice roped stanchion with the very nice-looking flowers that they have there. So that's a success story. And so my recommendation is to kind of find a model and just replicate that everywhere there is an outdoor dining, wherever it would fit. Obviously, it might not work on our narrower thoroughfares like Chambersburg Street, side of the Buck or the Gettysburger would be a little more challenging for physical barrier. And they only have 2 seats out there. They don't have a 4-top out there, and that's because the sidewalk is notably less wide, not as wide in those locations. So let's just start there if you would like. Just what are your thoughts about a concept like that, essentially a government-issued fence of some type that would go along with your permit fee?
I don't know if it has to be government issued. I mean, I really like the planters that Gettysburg Goods has put out to delineate their seating area. Those are tasteful and movable. I mean, it occurs to me looking at your photo, your amazing AI rendering of of the blue and gray there, that if you, if your brick is under that table, you still don't get to visit your brick.
That's true.
And the other issue around that too is that around some of these eateries, the bricks tend to be a little bit gross. They need cleaned, and that's the other issue. You travel from Ohio to see grandma's brick, and it's occluded with grease. And so, I think there's a value in using some sort of barricade to delineate the seating areas so that they don't tend to organically sprawl. I think there's a couple of our outdoor dining establishments that would find that challenging too, because they wouldn't have room for service for somebody to actually deliver to the table while staying within the prescribed area. Other thoughts?
My thought, you mentioned the pub solution worked and it's nice and aesthetic. So I don't know if I would be amenable to forcing them to have the uniform Gettysburg. And there's probably other ones like that. And I don't know if business owners would really want that. I think we'd have to reach out, and I think probably have to be a voluntary thing.
Also, I just thought of something. Hotel Gettysburg does this as well. They have a chain link fence, stanchion style, outside their area.
I'm not a big fan of the computer-generated graphic, but if business owners had a choice of this type of stanchion or this type of temporary fencing or this type of gating or chain link or whatever, I think that would be better. It would delineate the spaces, keep it open, not make it look cheesy. But I agree that, maintaining accessibility for pedestrians is also for staff to get to the tables and customers to get to the tables, et cetera. I think there's a win somewhere, and it's probably somewhere between your picture and what else is currently working. I mean, you got 2 different places that are doing it well, and the other sides of the square, they have the same amount of space. You've got a big sidewalk and a narrow sidewalk. It's just doing a better job with your big sidewalk and keeping your narrow sidewalk accessible, I guess.
So right now, there is no requirement to have some type of stanchion area. Right now, all we do is we put pins in the pavers where their authorized area is deemed to be. If council wants to go in this direction, we would have to put safeguards of some kind so we can avoid these types of large immovable objects. And I don't know what that looks like, but that's our current challenge right now.
Yeah, no, I think standardizing something like that has multiple benefits. I'm thinking about Plowman's, I'm thinking about the blue and gray places or the pub, places where it's not just outdoor dining, it's also outdoor alcohol service. And when you're sitting at Plowman's watching a band, I mean, those barricades let you know where you can take your glass and where you can't, and that has a value too.
True.
I think having the barriers, I think it's a really good idea because it delineates, this is dining, and then it also helps to define, our ADA compliance, where pedestrians can walk safely. And it does seem to be a problem with outdoor dining that, there's just this encroachment on the area that's for pedestrians. So I really like the idea of the barriers. And I know, there are going to be some establishments that aren't going to have the benefit of the space that other ones do. But that's just the way it is. I mean, we have to be cognizant of providing space for people in a wheelchair or people on crutches or just getting down the sidewalk safely. And it's not easy. It's really difficult sometimes to get down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of things I jotted down quick. I would say, I know the picture it was branded with the borough. I definitely would not brand.
I did that for aesthetic, no other reason.
Yes, but I wouldn't do that because, they might want to brand it themselves or just not at all.
Right.
The question of like removability for leaf and snow removal. So are they, permanent structures, or they can they be removed and moved around easily? This could make things harder with ease of access for guests, mobility, and staff, and ADA as well, if there's less to move around. Joining or moving tables could be more difficult. Who would the cost of the fence to the borough, or would it be the borough paying for this fence, or would it be the ownership paying for it?
Well, it depends which route. I saw some, no head shakings left and right, not up and down, about the issued ones. If we were to supply the stanchion type perimeter, it would come out of, the borough would use their fees for outdoor dining to purchase those, and then we would just keep them and issue them every year.
Yeah, like with the pub, theirs works because it doesn't impede visibility that well because the pub is so large. But if you did go with something like that was taller, a lot of places want the visibility. They want you to see people sitting outside because it's like, oh, there's a restaurant right there. Right. It would help probably with dog safety, and it could help with streetscape. But that was just my initial notes.
So what I'm hearing is general favorability for some kind of physical perimeter.
Actually, I didn't get to speak yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I am not for that.
Okay.
I think that I walk past Blue and Gray, obviously Sign of the Buck. I walk past Jamila a lot, and we're talking about 2 tables. I think it's a completely different ballgame when we're talking about that versus the pub. We're looking at this, and I understand the challenge. If we're talking about the pub and historic challenges with ADA, I want to address those. But I don't want to put a barrier in front of one table on each side of the Blue and Gray or the Sign of the Buck. I think, sorry if this sounds manipulative, that there's historic charm in walking past 2 tables that are just 2 chairs and a table. And I think a barrier would actually make less room for me to walk by in the morning, and I'm not in a wheelchair. So I would not be in favor of those barriers in most cases. And in the case of Plowman's or the pub or anywhere else where we might have a challenge, I want to address it with the owner and come up with a solution. That may be a barrier, maybe that's the best solution, but for the pub it makes sense. For the Sign of the Buck, it doesn't make sense for me.
I was under the impression that this was solely about Lincoln Square and the need to be able to have appropriate barriers for ADA compliance as well as to allow the larger outdoor dining spaces. I was assuming that there wouldn't be barriers in front of like Sign of the Buck or the smaller.
So that's a really interesting
two-seater
question,
cafe
yeah.
type
When we thought about this, we thought about it in terms of the overall outdoor dining, which applies to everybody. We didn't really think about just limiting it to the square. Harry, is that even possible? Because you have one ordinance that's comprehensive of the entire borough, essentially.
Right.
But you're carving out just a specific geographic space under the same ordinance to
Well, because
Ms.
you said
Sanders'
we
question.
have control over the sidewalks. That's what I was thinking. And the other business owners and residents would have control over their sidewalk, right?
It is the municipality's right to manage the public right-of-way.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you can have different rules for different rights-of-ways under the same ordinance.
Or into the Lincoln, you said there was a Lincoln Square, like,
Oh, sure, sure you can. Like, we wrote an ordinance that allows us to try parklets on specific blocks, not on any block.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. When we wanted to do a pilot for open container, that was going to be limited to geographic areas.
Could it be managed based on the number of tables? I mean, could it be something that if you have a restaurant that has 5 or more tables, then, you know, we would need to provide some kind of a barrier, even if it's just something as simple as just like a decorative chain, I don't know, you pick it, but, you know, it doesn't need to be like a big barrier.
So you don't need
Just
a
to define the
table for
space.
outdoor dining per se, like Plowman's isn't in the food service business, but they have an outdoor dining space, for example. They have some tables there, I believe, but
You do.
yeah.
So just
So when you-
maybe based upon the number of tables. You know, if you have 5 or more tables, then we really do need to define the space somehow.
So when you get the permit, though, it's just based on, like, linear footage of the frontage.
Okay.
And then they put the pins down, and you can fill it in with whatever you can fill it in with. So some tables are bigger, some tables are smaller than others, some, so it'd be hard to do it that way.
Could you do it by like capacity of people instead?
Or
Would that
or
be-
linear footage.
The outdoor spaces the inside the building, there's the capacities, but
Right.
they don't put capacities on outdoor dining
Right.
areas.
I think it's
How
not
about-
so much the capacity of the available space for tables, it's
Dimensional standards.
and accessibility for the borough to manage the space that they can't get to because there's an obstruction in the way.
Right.
And we always have to understand that what is our primary responsibility? What are we doing as a municipality? And what we're providing is traveling space for the walking public.
Yeah.
That's our duty.
So that's our
That's
number
our
one,
duty.
that's our number one priority?
What we're trying to do is trying to put some enhancements for, like our local business folks and so forth, so that we can still meet our duty, but we can make some allocations so that they can do a public dining or do dining on the sidewalks. But again, always paramount has got to be the free travel, and the ADA is absolutely, that's an absolute duty.
Yeah, the storefront that sticks in my mind most is the upper crust. And I don't think it has anything to do with the placement of the tables. Like, the tables are placed exactly where they can be. It's just an issue of somebody sitting a little further back from the table, or they get up and leave, they leave their chair out. The 2 end tables are so precariously close to tree wells. That's a space where I see like fixed barriers being beneficial, because not that it necessarily is the greatest aesthetic or whatever, but it provides for the customer a visual representation of where they should be limiting their physical space. So that's why I suggest dimensional standards as the guideline. But then also we do have a place like Plowman's where they are doing alcohol service outside, but people need to know they cannot walk past a certain point with their glass. So there are different places where I think barriers are beneficial, but I also understand there are situations where people might not want to use them.
I want to agree with Jeff. There are certain restaurants that a barrier would actually, I think, be an impediment, the smaller ones that you mentioned. So I agree that it should be dimensional, and we shouldn't kind of force the sort of barrier, especially that everybody has the same one. I think we have to work with each restaurant owner.
And I would suggest for the dimensional standard, it'd be its proximity to other impediments to travel.
I don't think we can pick it. I think it would have to be either everyone does it or not.
Well, we already do this, though. Like, if somebody wants to put out an A-frame sign, and they put it out in front of their storefront, and we go, and there's no place where they can put that, where they're not guaranteeing 5-foot clearance, they don't get to have the sign, right? So it's not about arbitrary or capricious enforcement at that point. It is based on, this is the space you have available to you. This is what has to happen.
And it wouldn't matter if they didn't choose to have the tree well there. It wouldn't matter to us. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good.
But you see the point that I'm making is, if we do this and then we go to 3 different owners, we're like, you're the only ones who have to do this. They're going to be like,
sure,
it's discrimination or whatever.
I mean, I wish there was a way with the herringbone brick pattern, it's not feasible now, but maybe at some point, is to delineate an ADA space throughout the square and down the sidewalks. Nothing can go there. I don't see a practical way to do that with the current brick that we have. I mean, Boston delineates the Freedom Trail right in the sidewalk. It's just there, but delineate it a little wider to make ADA. Another thought is, we keep hearing about the tree wells and its impact on ADA and also sidewalk damage. Have we ever considered like permeable pavers? And that would eliminate a lot of issues and still support pedestrian and vehicle traffic. And just have green sidewalks. I'll be the crazy guy to throw that out there. Jeff's giving me a thumbs up.
So
I'm gonna say no, we've never considered that.
Can I answer 2 things? We have thought about some permeable surfaces around trees. They have this thing called Perky Pave. It's kind of a funny name, but it allows for an ADA compliant surface over top of the trees and lets the water through. There's limitations to they're still going to end up, as the tree grows, they're going to start to heave, right? It's really hard to keep a tree from heaving anything. But I did want to touch on one of the things that you just said. So we have a unique opportunity, and knock on wood, we get some money for the construction, hopefully within the next couple of years. Now, at best, it's probably going to be 2030, right, until we get to construction. But we are going to be hopefully redoing the sidewalks on the square. And you touched on the idea of, and of course I'm taking notes here as you're all talking tonight, because this is really good information for me to take back to my design engineers, because within the next couple of months here, we're going to be full bore redesigning the square, and we're going to have every single name of every brick delineated. We already did the survey of it. We know every brick where they're at right now. So we're going to be repositioning them in a very key place. If we ultimately, the plan is to eliminate those parking spaces, and it almost doubles the sidewalk area. So that gives us a lot of space where we can reposition these bricks, put them at better locations. We had some different landscape architectural renderings of delineating the walking space. No sidewalk or no tables or anything would be in that area, which would be the sidewalk space, and maybe it's a different surface. Maybe that's concrete, and then there's other places where the bricks are. But we do have a unique opportunity within the next couple of years where we're going to be redesigning all of Baltimore Street and the square. Now, that's specific to the square and Baltimore Street, so because I think what we're hearing is that there's other obvious places in Chambersburg Street, York Street. I mean, Tommy's Pizza out in Steinway. There's a lot of places where there's tables out on the sidewalks. So I'm only speaking on behalf of the Gateway Connectivity redesign, but I think there is things that we can do with the design of the sidewalk to kind of help with this.
Yeah, I was going to second that from sort of a broad perspective, to keep in mind, I think, the value of having welcoming businesses that people can walk to. Walkability is really important. So I think it's a balance between access. Of course, we want to have access, but being able to see people in the community, being able to go to businesses, being able to be drawn in. If we do want to plan for that type of community, then having space for everyone to share the outdoor space is really important. So redesign, widening sidewalks, making it so that there's maybe less parking and more walkability. I mean, that is something I think to consider for how can we create space for everyone so that there's outdoor space as well as space for people to get by, because I think there's value in both.
I'm hearing no one has the appetite to limit the outdoor dining space. The challenge we're having is those spaces that we cannot gain access to through the normal course of conversation with a property owner.
Right. So I think what I heard here tonight is that I don't hear a keen desire to necessarily throw a mandate on every single property owner. However, I think we can say if you are going to use a barrier, it has to be to these dimensions.
Would be helpful.
It has to be movable. The base can't be more than 12 inches in diameter or whatever. They have to be put away at night. Whatever, how we are going to deal with that.
However you want to manage that, yeah.
And you mentioned that, the northern quadrants of the square are spaces that ideally are accessible and passable, and you like the aesthetic of it. So I think it wouldn't be too difficult to require uniformity from the southern quadrants. Just to say we want the entire square to look uniform from an aesthetic purpose. Well, primarily for accessibility, but also aesthetically, it's nice to be able to go around an entire square or through the square, each quadrant, and they have the same open feel and appeal, and of course access to be able to clean the bricks and address some of the structural damage or whatever's happening in some of these spaces.
So do we come back with
standards for barriers?
Standards for perimeters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Could I just
thanks,
ask,
everybody.
We had a challenge not with working with the pub, but with accessibility near the pub, and we feel like it's resolved now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what
they,
was
they worked with staff.
What was
and-
the success there, and why can't we replicate that other places?
Space.
Not everyone can negotiate the way some people can.
Let's go with space.
Go with space.
We're going to certain people and saying, oh, like, we can't read the bricks and that's a problem, and there's just no response.
So the issue with the pub was not necessarily about the bricks. What it was about is that when the tables were
Well, I understand
within,
that. I'm
you know,
trying to
certain
move on to a
distance of the
different
curb.
one. Like,
So that's the success we had.
Right.
Is we got them to kind of rekajigger where their tables go so that the sidewalks are passable, not necessarily that somebody can go look at their brick.
yeah, no, I knew it was a different one.
And they have the capacity to do that because they have some space to work with, where the upper crust does not. Right? They just don't have the space to try something new, while still taking, advantage of a fairly popular program that the borough has extended to restaurant owners. Each parcel has its own challenges.
I have a question. I mean, I don't know the ordinances and everything as well as everyone else does, but if a space like Upper Crust that has these tables that are obviously kind of going over the line and impeding on people and like the travel and ADA and all these different things, then why is that space allowed to have outdoor dining?
Because it fits within the dimensional requirements. The issue is not where the tables and chairs are placed, it's what happens to them throughout the course of a day.
And then if they were then, like, had to put a barrier in, would they still be within that, like, dimensions with their tables? Because I'm assuming it's a relatively small space, and then let's say those barriers are put in, then would they still have the adequate space to do it?
It's a good question. It could theoretically reduce their space. I mean, it depends. If you're going with a rope and a pole, that's going to be different than if you go with an 18-inch wide planter box on wheels, like they did at Gettysburg Goods, right? The planter boxes would maybe be more visually appealing, but would cut down your space more.
So, but then how would that potentially affect ADA compliance in the space for ADA on that sidewalk? Because I mean,
They'd still have to be within the same dimensional standard.
Okay.
And what we do for those, what Chad was saying, is we go and we measure out, this is where you can have stuff, and we actually shoot pins into the sidewalk, so the staff knows exactly where those lines are. But it's just that throughout the course of a day, stuff tends to meander.
Are there penalties for going beyond that, even if it was a customer that did it?
No.
No.
Can there be?
I can tell you that, I mean, yeah, basically it's like people don't push their chairs in, or, whatever might happen.
Right.
You'd have to get rid of the larger size tables, which is like 3 or 4, take them down to 2 tops, so you'd be losing seats, losing revenue, harder to move in within the space. There's things like that would happen, potentially.
And then
I'm no expert.
what are the problem areas that, because I feel like we're talking about all these different spaces, and some of them don't really seem to be as big of a problem as others. So shouldn't we focus on the most problematic spaces that these like traffic jams are really happening?
So, I mean, the traffic jams are one of the issues, right? Like the immovability of the giant planters is a separate issue. Grease accumulation on the sidewalk is a separate issue. So I think what we're trying to do here is to come up with either a standard or a standard practice that sort of addresses, like, one of the things we're super bad at is coming up with a solution that works for everybody. Like if we hit 50%, like, we're doing great, right? So, so there's no perfect solution here where every one of those vendors comes to us and goes, hey, you know what? You guys did a really good job there. That's never going to happen, right? So I think that's why what I'm hearing from other members here is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution on to use a barrier or to not use the barrier. But then there are different places that have different challenges. So if you're on the north side of Chambersburg Street, the sidewalks are too narrow for anything more than, the sign of the buck has a 2-top. Mama's just does not have the space to put a 2-top, not even one. It's just dimensional standards, that's all. If you had a restaurant on the south side of the street, you'd have an easier time. When you move out to York Street, it's the south side that's challenging and the north side's a little wider. And part of that is just problems we're dealing with because, so much of downtown was built 200 years ago and we're just trying to pack modern life in around those lines that were drawn.
We have a duty to regulate in a uniform manner, but we're trying to regulate something that's not uniform. So the challenges are there. I also think, because, just basic liability law is if someone walking on the sidewalk trips and falls because of a hazard, because it's uneven, the property owner is going to get sued because the property owner has the primary liability or primary duty to have a safe way to pass over. The borough is going to be secondarily liable because we have a duty to enforce our ordinances and make sure that that is a safe area of travel. To change the narrative, and I think it's probably a hard thing because sidewalks in boroughs just have historically, it's such a political hot potato, honestly. But what Charles talks about is collaboration. And if we look at it, and if we change the narrative, we're talking about each of us having duties that actually meld together. We basically have the same duty for safe travel, safe passageway, that collaboration and working together to limit each of our liabilities. And again, it's not, I say liability, but what it is meeting our mutual duties when it comes to folks. But it's so hard to change that narrative. But it really isn't us against them. It really should be kind of us and them together so that but that's pie in the sky and probably shouldn't be coming from a lawyer, but yeah, it would, if we could just change the narrative, I think that it's there, that the mutuality is there.
And to Allison's point, like, I mean, I would eliminate parking in order to expand public space. In fact, that's part of what's been proposed for the square redesign. But on those radial arms, I mean, I don't think that would be a popular. I mean, there would be plenty of space to build our gallows, I suppose, if we did that. I don't think the community would appreciate it. Plenty of space to stand with your pitchfork and your torch. Okay. Okay, so would you say that at this point you have kind of a sense of where we could go with this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, let staff noodle that for a month, and we'll get back to it in August.
Yeah.
And can I say, for Chad, the tree well thing sounds interesting, because they're a hazard too. Some of them have some pretty deep divots. And did they do something with the GIL with the trees right on Washington Street?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about that now.
Yeah. Right?
You get what you pay for in life, right? So those trees on North Washington Street actually have like an opening in the curb to let the water in, and the trees are set lower. They have these big, massive, 2-foot tall concrete curbs that are the whole way around the trees that make the roots go down and out, preserve the sidewalk. They're expensive. These things, nice big huge tree grates that are all ADA compliant. You can walk across it, you can drive across it. So yeah, if we did those kind of things for every tree, sure, but
at least around a square.
Yeah, right. So when we do this around a square, we're definitely going to be incorporating something like that, and those really key areas.
And down, Carlisle Street and York
But you might be
Street.
looking at 20 grand, for one of these things versus a tree. We do use root barriers now with our trees. They're plastic, looks like a barrel with the bottom top cut off, and you just slide them down over the tree, and it makes the roots go down and out. But they're made out of plastic, and they're only so good, right? So those cost a couple $100. Big concrete thing that we just did in North Washington Street, $20,000 a piece, right? So you get what you pay for in life, and those are going to last, hopefully, for a long time.
I think the big thing too is like the occupancy. I'm looking at a picture of the square here, and the pub, they get kudos, but there's going all the way around the corner, there's 4 other places that sell food or drink. If they wanted to have access to the sidewalk, that's going to be just as cluttered as anywhere else. Because you've got the bakery, you've got Getty's Gear, you've got the distillery, and you've got whatever the place is it's going to be where the vitamin place was. That could be, and you look at like Oh Man, if Oh Man changes to a restaurant, there's that whole, they get kudos now. And like the hotel, they own the whole quadrant. Like that's all hotel. Like they control that. But anywhere else, that could easily change, except like the quadrant where the Wills House is in the Masonic Building. They're not going to change. Blue and Gray is already a restaurant, so even if that is another restaurant, it's still going to have the same impact on that sidewalk. But that north quadrant, that could change drastically, or the south quadrant on the west side, just based on who wants to use it. So I think whatever we come up with needs to plan for the future too.
Yeah, one of the nice things about the proposed redesign of the square is that with eliminating all of that parking, the sidewalks push out really, 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 really far. There is so much capacity for us to put in public table seating, so you can go get stuff from wherever you want and go sit on the square and eat. I think what we've theorized for that redesign, and I'm cribbing notes from Charles here, but making the town square more focused on people than vehicles, and making it the town square again, the place where people gather. It's a really exciting plan. Even if we do eventually get that grant funding, though, it still doesn't really address our issues on York Street, Chambersburg Street, et cetera. Those are areas where we still have to figure out our solution for some pretty rough sidewalks. I can tell you in the last 7 weeks, I know of 3 trip and falls on heaved sidewalks, including my own dear sainted mother last week. And for an older person, all three of these falls were older women who had to go to the emergency room. Like a slip and fall on the sidewalk is not just an inconvenience for everybody. For some people, it's a really serious thing. So we do have to figure out our plan of attack here. Okay. We're going to have more sidewalk discussion. I really want to appreciate everybody for being thoughtful tonight and getting thoughts out into discussion. The only way we're going to move forward on this is if we really, really engage with this subject. So thank you all. Jill is now going to talk to us about the Welcome Center. Good evening, Jill.
Good evening, everyone. So some good things to share. So obviously the Welcome Center is underway. And with any construction project, it's behind. So I'll just come right out and say that. We've had some challenges with staffing and materials and some other things. But so Charles is putting some pictures up. This is today. So this is what you see from the alley. Not real glamorous just yet, but to go over a few things that have happened thus far. So obviously the excavation was done, the footers were poured, the foundation is in place. So you can see this lovely little dance floor that we have out here waiting to happen. The steel structures went up April 17th off the top of my head. If you forward to a different picture, you can see that the in-ground plumbing is in place. So you can see, that's the back porch. So that's, again, from the alley. That's getting framed out. That just got started. So, yeah, you can see the plumbing stems there. So obviously one of our big deals at the Welcome Center is bathrooms. So you can see that the bathrooms are starting to take place. That's indoor plumbing downtown, yay. So those things are happening. So the next things that are going to be on the calendar, let me scroll down so I can read my notes here. So we have the metal stud framing that's going to be happening very soon, meaning like tomorrow. Hold on, my computer's not cooperating. It's still not cooperating. There we go. So that's going to start to go in. So starting on the today's the 27th. So tomorrow. So you're going to start seeing metal studs and framing going up to take advantage of the thing. And that's what started today. So that's the back porch. So the metal studs and delivery happened today, which is good. So into next week, then you're going to start to see the second floor and plywood going up and together. Obviously after the first floor, the air barrier that has to happen, lots of those types of things. And into the middle of August, you'll start seeing the second floor metal studs, install of the exterior masonry work, and aluminum and glass fixtures for the window framing and so forth. There's a picture in there somewhere of the mock-up wall, Charles. So this is kind of what the brickwork is going to look like. This is an actual, they've created this fake wall that shows you what the brick will look like, how the windows will insert, what that top left corner shows you where the air barrier is, as well as the insulation, and really just kind of shows that it's meeting the architectural specs that were provided to the builder, and that's where we are with things. So it's you're going to start seeing the elevation that you should have seen at least a month ago, but it's starting to go up. So we are behind schedule, but I have great confidence in the team that we put together, the new subs that are coming in. they're prefabbing and pre-cutting all the studs, so they'll cut them off-site, bring them in, put them together. It's a small space to work in, so that's been one of the real challenges, is that they really don't have a prep space there. They're literally about 7 feet from each neighbor, so not a lot of shop space to work. So they're creating workarounds to that, and I think they're making that work quite well. We have another contractor meeting tomorrow. We meet with them every 2 weeks, and we'll have another update. We're on track with the grant funding, and the reimbursement process is going very smoothly. I'm very thankful for that. After the long time it took to set that up, it is working like it should, like it was promised to. So very excited about this project. Bummed that we're behind schedule, but we're still on track for this year. So stay tuned. So what can I answer? And if I don't know it, I'll ask Chad. Okay. All right, that was.
Thank you, Joan.
You bet.
All right, Chad, street preservation.
So I can keep this pretty brief. You probably have seen the chip sealing that have gone down over the last couple of weeks. It's pretty much done. The only things that are left to do are some thermoplastic pavement markings, the piano key crosswalks. We have one right here in front of the building. We have one on Middle Street. There's the turn arrows that go down on Middle Street, those kind of things. So that's really it. I think those are scheduled for next week, and then we can close out the contract with the contractor. At this point, all of the parking stalls should have been painted, the grip tight fog seals down. I think our contractor did as best as they could to try to sweep the stones off of the sidewalks. They go through with backpack leaf blowers essentially and blow the stones onto the street, and then they sweep it off the street with a street sweeper. It's not perfect, but I think they did the best they could. So appreciate everybody hanging in there through the construction. We did receive a couple of comments from the public. They were really respectful and professional, all the comments that I got, and people were understanding. I think they're starting to gather, now that this is a couple of times that we've done this, most people understand that just you got to live through the chip seal for a couple of weeks before we put the grip tight down and it locks the whip off. I think generally speaking, it has been received pretty well in the community. Of course, there's still going to be some people that don't love this process. I think the big thing that I want to end with is make sure I emphasize the fact that this surface treatment is 5 times cheaper than a complete mill and overlay. Is it as good as a mill and overlay? No. I mentioned it earlier tonight. I'm using up my you get what you pay for in life, right? So we could pay 5 times more and do 1/5 of the streets that we did this year and get a hot mix asphalt mill and overlay. Or we can do 5 times the amount of streets and get what we have. So it's just something that we always got to be struggling with. And this is a practice that's pretty tried and true throughout America. Federal Highway Administration promotes this type of a thing. So I feel like it was fairly successful. I don't know of any change orders from the contractor, so we're basically going to pay him what we have contracted. So I think that's really it, unless you guys have any questions for me with it.
Yeah, for the context of the chip and seal, when did we start doing that? How many years ago?
Oh, boy. I'm going to say over 10 years ago was...
Before that was the fabric, right?
We still do some projects with the fabric, but that gets a hot mix on top of it. We probably did the first one. I know we did Hay Street, McMillan, that area, in around John Lawver's house. We did all of those with chip seals a long time ago. I'm going to say that was more like 15.
12 years ago.
At least 12. But we've done it, I'm going to say, 4 times. We've probably done it more than 50% of the streets. Actually, I was in an email thread with the mayor, and I was pleasantly surprised to hear some people say that we've never done this before. And I said, well, that means to me that we've done a pretty good job, because we've done this to 50% of the streets, right? So that means the streets are turning out fairly good. If you drive out Washington Street, some of that has hot mix overlay and some of it has this chip seal on it, and most people wouldn't tell the difference. After it wears in a little bit, 50% of Washington Street has this surface on it, and most people would not realize that that's the case. So it's actually encouraging to hear that people haven't recognized this before. I think this year maybe was a little bit more in your face. You know, we had all of Constitution done right through the college, right? We had all of Middle Street. That's one of our main borough roads, right? So it was a little bit more. Some of the other times that we've done it were on more side roads, so people didn't see it as much. Maybe that's part of what this is.
Yep. Great.
Were you happy with this contractor?
Yeah. So they're paving contractors, right? They're not people with PhDs. There were some challenges. The first day, I know Robbie was frustrated. I'll just say this is that so our inspector was there at 8 o'clock. They're supposed to start at 8 o'clock. They were in Pittsburgh with a broken down machine. So they didn't get here until noon that day. So it pushed we had a lot of correspondence with Alex at the college. He was great trying to help us with the eliminating the parking, you know, and getting people in and out. On Constitution, they have the daycare there, and they're trying to get people in and out of there, and it was a real challenge, right? And so when a contractor doesn't show up, he's supposed to be done by noon, and he doesn't get here until 1 o'clock. That puts everything else back. So you can't plan for that kind of breakdowns, you know what I mean? There was times whenever they came through and they had all of the sidewalks blown off, and then they came through with another blower and blew the stones back onto the sidewalks. We had to make some phone calls, get them back out here. They fixed it. So at the end of the day, there was a couple of mistakes, but they always addressed the concerns that we had. Probably took a little bit more of Robbie's time than what we would have liked. Could they have been better? Sure. Could any contractor be better? Sure. You know, I don't know that there was enough one way or the other to say this is the best contractor I ever worked with, or to say that that we would exclude them if they were. Keep in mind, you know, as a municipality in a state of Pennsylvania, you have to accept the lowest bidder, right? So I think they did a fine job.
Thank you.
Also responsive and responsible.
Correct. Those are the key words.
And you two get your PhDs. Remember, there's an opening for highly educated pavers. Okay. Any questions for Chad? All right. I'm a little scared of this.
No, don't be scared. This is actually really an informational item. Be scared in August and September.
Okay. Yeah. All right, cool.
The Planning Department, Public Works Department, the borough engineers, and myself have been meeting for a couple months every 2 weeks to start assembling what will become the next luminous capital improvement plan for the municipality. At a previous meeting, I kind of outlined the success and some of the frustrations of the last SIP. And by and large, we really chipped away at a lot of big heavyweight projects at the last SIP. And the new one, you'll see some of those carry over. But for the council and the public at large, is kind of wanted to go through the process that staff has been undertaking over the last couple of weeks. So each time we have a proposed project, we methodically go through ranking that project based on the different expertise of each department. And I'll explain why this has a score of 100 in just a minute. But just for example, I just wanted everyone to see that each project is based on a whole list of criteria. And I won't go into the definitions of the criteria, but things like consistency. Is a project directly consistent with the comprehensive plan, for example? Coordination, is the project being coordinated with another project? Cost-benefit analysis, is there health and safety considerations? Is the project legally mandated? Does it help preserve existing assets? Is there money to pay for the project? Is there an opportunity for cost shares? Is it feasible? What's the extent of the benefit to the project? Overall budget impact on not just a operational budget, but also from a longer term capital budget. Does it help conserve our resources? Are there environmental considerations? How does it affect our neighborhoods and our residential areas, and does it help improve economic development impact for the borough? So each of these categories is ranked based on these four folks, myself, the engineer, planning department, public works department. We each give these different scores because we're each looking at these through a different lens. But in the aggregate, they come up with a score, and that score then ranks where we think it should fall in a continuum of a must do, a should do, or not do. Before I get into the narrative side of this scoring sheet, there are projects, and this is a little different than how we approached this 5 years ago. There are some projects that we aren't going to rank because we know we just have to do them for one reason or another. And so wherever you see a green header with a 100, that means that it's really not up for debate so much because it has to have to happen sometime in the next 5 years. After the project is scored, then we move over into narratives. So this is an example of a project that's going on right now, and that's why the Lincoln Avenue project is green, because it's already underway. So we definitely need to finish it. But each project will get a narrative to describing the project, why we need to do the project, and are there alternatives to the project. And then we break that down into the next 5 years of funding. So since it's ongoing, this project will be at the top of the list for 2027. And you can see our funding sources that are beginning to be identified and the value of each one of those funding sources. So Columbia Gas, if you remember, we always partner the best we can with our colleagues that do various infrastructure work or utility work. So stormwater is going to have a component to Lincoln financing that project, same with Columbia Gas, and then of course the borough has to participate in that funding as well. So that's essentially how we rank all of the projects. To date, we have identified 46 projects in your SIP, and they look like this. This is a very, and I know this is really small, and I know Chief yelled at me offline because he can't see that from the other side of the room. Hopefully that helped.
It does.
Okay. Saldo, that's been on the work plan for, I don't know.
1,000 years.
1,000 years. So let's just hunker down and get it done. So we're saying that's a must do. Now, yeah, you could make the argument, well, it's been on there for another 1,000 years, so let it sit there for another 1,000. But at some point, we'd like to check the box. So staff's recommending make that a must do for next year. Soon in 2028, we're going to have a comprehensive plan redo. It seems like we just did that not too long ago. I won't belabor this, but these are ranked by the must-dos, and then some of the scores you can see after the list of must-dos, you start seeing the scores. Not all of them are complete. Not all of us got our numbers in yet, but nonetheless, I'm just presenting this to you and that you have access to this list, so feel free to look at it. It's not exciting reading, but it's important reading. And the only thing I would ask of the council from either today or in the next month or so, if you're looking at this list and there's something on there that you don't see that you think should be on there, please just reach out and we can add it and evaluate it just like the others have been evaluated.
Okay. All right. Is that it?
That's it.
That was
Told you not to.
Relatively painless. Are you doing big binders?
If you want me to do a big binder.
I don't.
You can do
Here's
a
your
big
show and tell.
binder.
85-pound binder.
There were a lot of trees that died during that binder.
All right, any questions about the SIP and how they're approaching it? Everybody cool? All right, thank you. And thanks to the staff who are working on that as well. I know it's a pain in the butt when you got other stuff and you want to be working on. Okay, so Chief Snyder, Lieutenant Command position.
I know the council has had some discussion relative to this well before my time. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. However, I will tell you, I don't think this is the appropriate time. I think this is something that would be better off a little bit further down the road. I prefer to take some time and prepare the folks we have, our first-line supervisors, our next generation of first-line supervisors, and provide them some of the skills that they would need from a police management position. Right now, I don't know that we're there. The other thing I would say is I think we need to spend a considerable amount of time considering how we recruit people in general, not just when we're going to have a test, but in the prep that goes up into that. I'm concerned about some of our structure and how we depend a lot on our part-time officers. We need them to make it happen, but we have to have a better system than we have right now. So my suggestion at the end of the day, to keep this short and sweet for the council, I think for the time being, this is something perhaps to put it on a shelf. I'm not saying we do away with it, but I don't know that we have we've done the prep work internally to get the appropriate candidates ready for this. I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, any questions for the chief? All right, thank you, sir. That's going to take us to our second public comment section of the evening. This section is not restricted in terms of topic, but we do ask you to use the podium. Please speak directly into the microphone. Please state your name and address of residence, and please limit yourself to 5 minutes. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we will adjourn to executive session.